Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is FCI Live Series for Fall 2022. My name is JQ Hanna, and I am the Assistant Director of Food Co-op Initiative. We're so happy to have you guys here and excited to be into the second week of our fall series. And this is the Main Street Market session. And we're super psyched about this one because a lot of the models and the things that we focus on and work with, which is wonderful, are people who are organizing in large cities, in or decent size, 100,000 or more, maybe 50,000 or more people within a purchasing radius of the store, larger communities. Yet the communities that are almost as frequently, if not more frequently, I'd say the only communities losing grocery stores as frequently as as parts of cities that are disenfranchised and disinvested in large cities that are predominantly non-white communities is rural communities, really smaller communities that used to all have their own grocery stores that are losing them left and right or have lost them quite a while ago. And finding a solution that is cooperative, that can be done cooperatively, but works actually just on a kind of an operational economic level for small grocery stores in very small communities is tough. And I'm so excited today to have Caileen is with us. Alex is going to be joining us in a little bit. They are the co-founders of Main Street Market, and this is not a cooperative. They have independently founded this and own this, but they've generously agreed to come and share with us what they have done, how it's working. And it's really something that those who want to form cooperative grocery stores in small rural communities can learn from. So we're excited to have them here with us today. And I'm going to give Caileen a second to introduce herself before we start the slides.
Hi, welcome everyone. I am so excited to be here. Please have a little grace with me. This is my first ever Zoom presentation, so we're kind of learning as we go. But yes, my husband Alex and I have Main Street Market. It's just a small little grocery store in Evansville, Minnesota, rural Minnesota. And we'll obviously get a little bit more into that as we go through the presentation.
And I'm apologizing to you. I'm trying to go find, there we go. I was trying to share the slides and they had kind of disappeared on me. My fault. I'm finding them now. Here we go. All right. Take it away.
All right. So as you can see on the first slide right there, we think their model is a bit unique. We really want to strengthen rural communities, and we have a blend of traditional and non-traditional shopping options, which do that. So go ahead next. All right, so a little bit about us and our background. My husband and I both grew up in rural Minnesota. We actually went to the same high school, dated off and on a little bit, finally figured it out, got married. Shortly after we got married, we moved to the Twin Cities. I was in college wrapping up my degree over there. Alex found a job and we ended up staying in the North Metro area for a number of years. It was fun, getting to experience something different. Big city living is definitely a huge change from small town life. But when our daughter was around 1.5 years, we decided, it'd be really nice to move back home to family. Because we found ourselves almost every weekend hopping on I-94 and driving back home to see grandma and grandpa, all of that stuff. So we were able to sell our house. We moved back up. We had purchased some of the family farmland to actually build our home on. And so something that's important to us too is being able to live sustainably. And what does that look like? So Alex and his dad actually built our house themselves on the off time while he was working full time. We are 100% off grid, which has been a fun adventure in and of itself. Especially since we're fully solar powered and winter time a little interesting. But we just like problem solve and figure things out and maybe go a non-traditional route with things, we'll say. When we moved back home, I was able to stay home full time with our daughter, and Alex was working as a diesel technician, a field tech. And so he would drive to different farm sites, and he would be working on, different equipment that would break down, and he had all crazy odd hours. And so actually this last January, he was accepted into a fellowship through the Initiative Foundation, which is based in Minnesota. And they work with a pool of social entrepreneurs as they are starting up a new business and that sort of thing. So Alex was actually able to leave his full-time job as a diesel technician, and he has now, since this last January, been able to focus full-time on the grocery side of things. So it's very exciting. Yes, he has a diesel background. I have an education background. We definitely do not have a grocery background. So we have just been diving right in and figuring things out as we go along, and have learned a ton of different things along the way. Yep. All right, next. So Evansville is a small farming community. It's about a 2.5-hour drive from the Twin Cities area, just to give a little bit of an idea. The population in town is around 600 people, but if you look at the zip code, it's around 1,200 people. We have a lot of agriculture, lots of farming going on. We have different people involved with the healthcare field and this and that. You know, we did a little bit of research when we were thinking about this. We discovered, you know, the average age is 47 years old. So, you know, in the 40s, there's families in town. You know, your average income is around $53,000 a year. So it is a neat little community, though. We are a consolidated school district with the next town over with Brandon. And, you know, Evansville is just kind of one of those, I don't know if I want to say typical small towns, but, you know, back in the day, business was booming, things were happening. And then I don't really know why, but, you know, things just, the town changes and moves, and it's maybe a little quieter than what it used to be back in its heyday. What else? Oh, so I'm kind of looking at my notes over here. It was built along the railroad lines, and so that did bring in a lot of commerce, a lot of stuff back in the 1800s through the 1900s. And so that's where it got its mark, made its mark, I guess, if you will. Let's see, let's go ahead to the next slide. One of the neat things about Evansville's grocery history is at one point they actually had 3 fully operating stores, grocery stores in town. Yeah, wow. With, you know, when the railroad was going through and there were more businesses and people were staying more local, there wasn't a lot of this bedroom community type of thing going on where people would drive to a different town for work. There were a lot of businesses in town employing a bunch of people, and people just tended to stay more local. So yes, at one point it was 3 stores operating at the same time. After doing a little bit of digging around, we found in the 1970s, it dwindled down to 2 stores operating full time. And then I'm not quite sure when it happened, but at some point it was just Nelson's Grocery that remained. And that grocery store had been in operation for around 60 years or so. It was a 2-generation store, and it was right on the corner of Main Street. I included a photo right there. Alex remembers as a kid going into that store and getting candy and all that fun stuff too. They carried a lot of regular grocery items, but then they also did retail. They had some clothing, kind of just anything you might kind of need, you could have right there, find right there. They had a pretty decent sized footprint. And in, what was it? 2017, they ended up having to put the store up for sale, just due to some family circumstances and things like that. Around that time, Alex and I had been looking about moving back home, and we had actually inquired a little bit to find out more information about, you know, like what pricing are they looking for, what's involved with purchasing the store, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, at that point in time, we weren't ready to take on a whole full-size grocery or even take the leap and dive to the grocery world. So eventually the building ended up being sold. It's now an auto body shop. So they threw in a big garage door right in the front and did some modifications to the building that way. But, you know, it was really sad to see that close, for one. You know, and as JQ had mentioned earlier, there's there's a growing trend, it seems like, that a lot of grocery is closing up in small town, or they're really struggling to keep up with more of the bigger box stores in the neighboring larger towns. For example, where we live, if you wanted to go to like a Cub Foods or some of the larger grocery chains for your shopping, you have to drive at least a half hour away, um, which can be kind of difficult. Um, I know people like growing up, my family too would, if you go into Alexandria, you plan like one big whole trip. So we're going to hit this store, that store, and this store to really maximize your time. But it's a draw on your time and, the fuel to get there and all of that sort of stuff. And so once we had moved back to the area after Nelson's had closed down, we had heard a lot from the community, man, we miss having our own grocery. Some of the other business in town tried to help and compensate for that. There's a meat market in town, so they brought in a dairy cooler. So there would be some offerings for milk and cheese and butter to go along with what else they had for sale. And then the gas station in town expanded some of their grocery selection. But we heard from a lot of people, part of the issue is there wasn't much for produce offering in the area. As well as prices, in a convenience store are marked up higher, which can be a tough thing sometimes. If you want to get a box of cake and it's cake mix and it's a few dollars even more than what you would typically spend in a grocery store, it's, it could be a bit challenging that way. So more and more when we were talking with people, we kept hearing, oh, I wish we had a grocery store. Man, we really miss Nelson's. I just wish someone would bring something in. So Alex, who tends to be a problem solver, came to me one day as he was, doing a lot of driving on the road, an hour and a half to job sites. He gets home and he goes, Caileen, we're going to open a grocery store. And I laughed and I laughed. I said, we have no idea what we would be doing. We know nothing about the market. I don't even know how you begin to set something like that up. Where are we going to put it? What's it going to look like? How are we going to staff it? Because most small town groceries are open 7 days a week for very long hours. And with having a couple, well, at that point we just had Bella. So, with a young family, that's kind of hard to do. We'll either be having the expense of having lots of people on staff to run it, or we would be, the flip side, living at the store basically full time. But he said, I think I have an idea. And he dove into research and looking online and seeing like, what if we could have an option where people could come in and shop whenever they need to, at whatever works for them, their convenience. Because he noticed as he was getting home at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, he would be really hungry and there'd be nowhere to stop for decent food on the way home because everything was closed up, or the small towns just simply didn't have grocery anymore. So the more research he did, we kind of were looking around and seeing, we discovered that there is a small store in Minnesota, I think south of the cities, in New Prague, and they are focused more with like organic, clean foods, something, within that realm. But they did have a 24/7 access, and we thought, well, that's really neat. Reached out to them a little bit, but then continued to do our own research as well. And eventually we sat down, consolidated everything, and came up with an idea on how to utilize door access and point of sale and all of that stuff to create this model where if they purchase a membership to the store, that membership gives them 24/7 access where they can come in and shop whenever they need to. Say it's harvest time and they're out in the fields until 1 o'clock in the morning. They can run in, grab anything that they need and go on home, throw the pizza in the oven, whip up something to eat, grab things to drink, that sort of stuff. It's available to them instead of having to wait until, the store would open at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning the next day. So we know people who are in the farming situations like that. We know people who work in healthcare with the differing shifts, or people who do other types of work where there's second shift, third shift, where traditional shopping hours just weren't a really good fit with their lifestyle and their work style. And so, so we thought if it could be available 24/7, they would be able to come into the store, grab what they need, pay for it, and go home. That would be great. But what do we still do about the staffing and things like that? Because we still wanted to be open and available because we knew some people would not want to utilize technology or feel comfortable coming in and doing things like that. So that's where the idea of being open a few days a week for a set amount of time would work. And we tried to, oh, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here. We can go to the next slide. Sorry about that. Maybe let's go one more over and then we'll come back to it. Okay. So I listed out some of the benefits. I talked a little bit about the 24/7 shopping. But we did want to have those traditional hours available because it's important to have that touch point with community, to create those relationships, to be able to find out what's happening in town, what are people looking for, what are we needing. And so with being open the 3 days a week, we've been able to create and foster those relationships, to get that feedback. You know, we have some people who they only choose to come in and shop on our Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We have members who still come on in anyways because they want to see the kids or they want to check out what's new or just to chit chat. One of my favorite things was, especially since we opened in 2021, is, you know, being able to see people come on into our store and the connections being made right there too, you know, because grocery stores are kind of one of those hubs in a community where, you know, unfortunately with the pandemic, we've lost, you know, some of that meeting and stuff like that. So now that things have opened up more, people are able to get together. It was so much fun to listen in a little bit and hear people going, oh, I haven't seen you in forever. Catch me up on life. Oh, what about this? And so it was really neat to be able to bring in that extra sense of community back to town and a place for gathering. Another one of the benefits we have is our model we've discovered provides a lot of flexibility. We all know that no two communities are the same. They can have the same numbers or maybe the same amount of businesses, but each community has its own culture and things that make it unique and yeah, just unique and its own self. And so that being said, communities also have different needs. And so with having this blend of traditional shopping hours with the technology and the 24/7 access on top, this can really be set up however the needs are for a community. So for example, excuse me, there is, we chose the 3 days just to give it a shot in the dark. We had no idea if the 3 days were going to work. We just kind of figured, you know, a day on and a day off, we'll get a weekend day in there, see how it goes. Those 3 days for our community have worked really well. So we've continued to stick with them. But there might be another community where there's more people staying in town or would like to utilize it more. I don't know, for any variety of reasons. Maybe 4 days a week being open would work, or, you know, 3 full days, but then a half day added in. You know, there's a lot of flexibility on when you build in your traditional hours and having those touch points with community there. Also with the flexibility is we could see a variety of different people and groups being able to utilize this for managing and running a grocery store in town. So for example, we're the sole owners of our business, but maybe there's a community group, or especially in your case with a cooperative, being able to add this 24/7 access in with what you're already doing could be of great benefit. You know, with the technology and stuff like that, we know who's coming in, we know who's coming out. You know, we have cameras and our door entry logs each person that comes in, so we know what time they're there and that sort of thing. But it's just, we've noticed more and more, this is something that can complement a lot of other good models that out there. So it'd be exciting to see if maybe, you know, how that would play out in the future with that.
And I had a quick question here because I think it's sensitive to the
Oh,
moment, which is, do you have to
sure.
purchase a membership to shop during the open hours, or is that only if you want to shop in the
Oh,
evening?
thank you for that question. Yes, I'll clarify. So the membership is if you want to shop during all the hours that are not open hours. So our traditional hours on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, it's a normal store. Anyone can come in and shop. You don't need the membership to do that. You just come in, walk through the store. I'm there. Alex is there. Sometimes his mother-in-law or my mother-in-law is there. Um, it's just your regular traditional grocery shopping experience. So the membership gives you the access for when the building is locked, basically. Um, it's one of those things too, when we were thinking, okay, if it's available 24/7, we're not really out any extra money for electricity. The coolers are still running, the lights are still pretty much on. The heating's on in the winter, air's on during the summertime. And so we just figured, why not give it a try? And I mean, if majority of the stuff is going to be on anyways and utilized, let's just let people continue coming in and shopping.
And a quick question, is there a fee? What's the fee to become a member?
Yes. So that was another thing we kind of went back and forth on trying to figure out, because we wanted to make sure, our costs were covered for the technology side of running that, the monthly subscriptions and things like that. But we also did not want the fee to be extraordinary. And then people would just go, oh, no, never mind, we're not going to do that. So what we did is we have 3 different levels or terms for membership. We have a full year is $75 upfront. And if you break that down, it's around $7 a month, if you think in those terms. So a lot of people found that was really, really reasonable to do. So it's $75 for 12 months, or $50 for 6 months, or $30 for 3 months. What we discovered our first summer being open is a lot of people have cabins or lake lots, so they travel in, and they just really gravitated towards the 3-month membership. Oh, this is great. I'm traveling 2 hours. When I get up there on a Friday night at 7 o'clock at night, I can grab everything I need for the camper or the cabin. We're all set to go. And so that worked out really, really well. Majority of our 3-month membership was linked with the people who had the cabins or the lake lots. Our 6-month membership, we noticed majority of people with those were more of the snowbirds. So they're here, summer into fall a little bit, but then they head south. And then our full-time memberships are primarily people who are local, who live in the area. Let's see here.
I distracted you. We were talking about the flexibility. Yeah, I think you were just finishing up that and going to affordability.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. So yes, one of the things with the affordability is the lower overhead, because we're not open the 7 days a week for the long amount of time. We are able to save a bit of money when it does come to, oh, I'm sorry, my brain just fizzled out for a second.
Staffing costs have got to be it. To me, that's, as someone who's run a store, I'm like, oh my goodness, the savings.
Yes. And that was one of the things too, when we were trying to consider, should we go into groceries, should we not? I mean, that's a huge cost right there, to try and wrap your head around, how are we going to make this work? And so with wanting to also set up the store in hopes to be sustainable, too, with having lower staffing costs, that helps us to also be able to pass on lower pricing to the customers. So we are able to price our products at a little bit more competitive, at a more competitive point. There's also a big stigma of small town grocery has to be crazy expensive. And so this is a way that we can kind of help fight that stigma a little bit. We've had so many people come in to the store and looking at our pricing and going, wow, I pay about that same amount in town and I would have to drive a half hour to get there. So that has been a really fun thing, just seeing the shock and surprise on people's faces when they realize we're not crazy expensive here. We try and keep things as decently priced as we possibly can. And so with the lower overhead and being able to pass that along, that has been beneficial just overall to everybody. And I know a lot of people have definitely really appreciated that. I think that has also been a good draw for people coming into our store and utilizing our store as well. Once they realize I'm not going to be paying an arm and a leg for this product or that product. So yeah. And then as far as the work-life balance goes, like I wrote right in there, the store basically runs itself. All of the housekeeping things we do, that's necessary to keep the store up and running, we can do when we're there. We do go in on Wednesday mornings for our stock order. That's when our delivery truck comes in. And so we're able to really, because we're not open traditionally during Wednesday mornings, we're able to focus in, get the order in, do any price adjusting and stuff time as well. So yeah, it's been really nice. We've been able to also be able to take some time to spend with our family, um, and to not quite be as stressed out, I guess. Um, all right, let's see. Could we move back to slide number 5, please? All right, so with any big project and new idea, there are definitely speed bumps that come along. I think sometimes that's things people like to gloss over. You know, we like to focus on the positive, focus on the good things happening. Um, but we want to be open and honest and share, you know, we did run into plenty of challenges along the way trying to get this up and going. Some of the things that we ran into, we knew really specifically what we wanted in a point of sale and inventory system and to be able to integrate. We wanted to find a product that would allow us to like do the door entry and be able to scan and pay from your phone and all of that sort of thing. So what we ended up doing was we, after looking at many different products, we kind of pieced some things together. So our door entry system is separate from the other systems, but you do get access with your smartphone. With your Bluetooth and location turned on, you can walk right up. You don't have to open the app. You just have to have your phone within proximity, tap the reader, it unlocks, and you're in. For people who don't want things on their phone, we also have a key fob option too. So you just hold it right up, like, you know, when you're at the gym, it unlocks the door, you go right on in. So that was really nice to find. And then as far as the point of sale side goes, we wanted to also have the option to scan and pay from your phone. So we, after some digging around, we did find a company that was a newer startup. And after talking with them, they thought, sure, we'll go along for this crazy ride. I mean, we're not built for grocery, but we'll try and grow with you and figure it out. And so they also had the option to either use the kiosk, the checkout kiosk that we have, or people can download a separate app on their phone. And that links with our store and inventory system. And then you can scan and pay and you're out the door like that. What we've noticed is we're kind of reaching our max or our limit right now with that particular point of sale system. So we're working with the developers trying to figure out, you know, like how can we make this expand or how can we make it a little less clunky? You know, we want to have a smooth process when it comes to things like that. So that has been one of the challenges, but I'm really thankful we found the group that we did. And it's been a fun experience getting to figure out the different quirks with it and that sort of thing. Another speed bump we had is we had to change up the storefront. I included 2 pictures. So we're right on Main Street. The picture on your left is what the building originally looked like when we purchased it. Many people who live in town, who have been in town for years, had no idea there was a building between the art center and the workshop. It was just very nondescript. It was a storage building filled to the brim with odds and ends and everything like that. So we were able to come to an purchase agreement with the owners, help them clear everything out too. And because Alex was still working full time at this point, we hired out the help to redo the front of the store. We knew we wanted big windows. We wanted to make it warm and inviting, and just feel like you're walking into an extension of your pantry at home. And so we also chose warm colors for the inside, and just tried to make things nice and cozy and comfortable. Especially, you know, we've kind of been trained if a building is locked, you can't go inside. And so even if people have the access, the first couple times going up to it, going, oh wait, I can be here, can be a little intimidating. So we tried to make it warm and welcoming and inviting. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback on just the style and the setup of the building as well. We did run into a little bit of issue with some funding at first. Found out that banks consider grocery high risk. So had lots of conversation and talks. We met with our community development group, and they were able to help us out with a loan to get some of our coolers and fund some of those things there. So that helped. Plus, they were really great to bounce ideas off with. We went to them with the idea at the beginning too, saying, "Are we crazy for considering this? Do you think the town would accept it?" And so they were really big supporters, and helped with getting the correct word out. Because in small towns, the message can be a little, like the telephone game. You start out with one thing and it kind of ends up something else later on. But we were able to secure funding for our business, and we were able to just take off and go with that. Our building, we did have to do some updating. It did not come with any heating or air conditioning. There had to be extra plumbing put in, electrical work done, things of that sort. But what we could do, we did ourselves. So we redid the floors. We put in the work to redo the walls. We sourced out shelving that came from a Kmart out in South Dakota. But we were able to secure a deal on that as opposed to purchasing new. So we also try to keep in mind, what can we do to help keep our construction costs minimal as we're fitting out the building to be a grocery store.
We just had a question about that, so I think you answered it. It was a mix of used
Okay.
and new equipment, or?
So our shelving is used, but we did make sure that our coolers and freezers were new because they had a much better efficiency rating. And so,
Yeah, and they break
um,
a lot when they're used.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Thank
Yep.
you.
So that was one thing that we did, I guess, splurge on, if you will. But it was really important for us to have the new coolers and freezers, just to help kind of stop some of that headache from happening as well.
For sure.
And yeah,
They can
definitely.
cost more in the long run that way. We did have a question that I think you kind of addressed it, but just people getting used to checking out in this manner. Did you find any speed bumps around getting people educated on how to do this, or did people take to it pretty easily?
Yeah, that is a great question. The first week we opened, because we did a soft opening, and then we were fully open for long hours that Monday through Saturday or Sunday, I think, just that we could get people in the store, see what was happening, explain the system. When we have people sign up for memberships, we prefer that they actually come into the store so we can show them how to get in, what's available, and then how to utilize the checkout kiosk. So during the traditional hours, it's an iPad mounted, and I can do everything on the iPad. And then when I close up for the day, I just swing the iPad around, and that's how people utilize the self checkout right there, with the system. And so some people were still a little like, oh, hesitant. We did hear, oh, they got that stuff at Walmart. I'm good to go. I know how that works. But for people who weren't maybe as tech savvy, I told them, come on in as much as you want while we're open. Like, practice scanning. I'll answer any questions you have. I'll work things with you. We want you comfortable and being able to utilize your membership and actually be here when we're not. And so we did have a handful of people who come in and they would just practice scanning through different items. And once they got pretty comfortable, they were smooth sailing. We also have our contact information posted by the checkout. So that way, if there's any questions that come up, or if there's a hiccup with the system, we really encourage people reach out to us, send us a text, give us a call. You're not bothering us, because we heard a lot like, oh, I think the checkout was down and I didn't want to bother you because it was supper time type of stuff, and it's like, please let us know. If we find out right away, we can address the issue. Otherwise it grows into a really big headache, if it's 10 transactions down the line before we find out about it. So, I think people knowing that we are available, even though we're not physically there, we're still available, helps put a lot of questions at ease too, and take care of that side of thing. But yeah, most people found that it was pretty simple once they went through it a few different times. And we, have some older people too who are saying, oh, I just got a cell phone, or I just figured this out. We had one lady come in, this is my first debit card ever. How do I use it? And so it's been neat to work with them and kind of train them in and teach them some more technology stuff and get them a little bit more comfortable with that. And we hear quite frequently, who would have thought in small town Evansville we'd have this stuff here? Um, so that's been kind of fun too. Let's see. I hope that answered that
Oh, I think
question.
you did a great job. Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just
Okay.
felt with it fit in with what you were
Yes.
doing right now.
No, definitely. I'm glad you did that. Um, so yeah, so let's see. We talked about the funding. So licensing, that was an interesting um, endeavor right there. So we filled out all the paperwork we needed, mailed all our stuff off to the Department of Agriculture, because that is who our licensing is through, and got a notice that um, everything that was mailed in, nobody at that time was working in the building, and so we actually had to submit everything electronically. And we found out it's good to make backup copies of things that you're going to send in. So once we got that resent in, things are going well. The project with flipping the store was moving along, and Alex gets a phone call from our licensor, and she says, Alex, I have to have an awkward conversation with you. And you're thinking, oh, anytime a licensor calls and says that, that's not going to be a good conversation. So I hear that sometimes your store is not going to have anyone there. And he goes, well, yeah, that you heard right. And she goes, and but people can still shop there if nobody's there. Yep, that's right, that's right. And she goes, oh, well, see, you can't do that. He goes, really? Why? And it turns out there's a statute out there where there needs to be a person in charge while customers are in shopping, which we apparently had missed that one. So Alex goes, okay, well, we still want to move forward with this. What do we need to do? We know it's been done before. What do we need to do? So the licensor we had, she was wonderful. She put us in contact with different people with the state. And it did take a long time back and forth, because we said, we see this having really good potential. What would make you guys comfortable with us having this shopping option available? And so we received really good feedback. Majority of the stuff was things we had already implemented anyways. And we were able then to write up a variance to that statute, and it was accepted. And so because we have that variance, we are now able to operate then with that 24/7 access. If we could, or if we needed to, we could go fully unmanned, if you will. Thankfully, we've never had to do that. The option is there if we were to need it, but we're covered with that completely, as being able to operate as a traditional grocery store during those hours. But that was definitely a big speed bump, because it took up a bunch of time. I want to say about 6 months worth of time. So it did to be as open as we could with people, explaining, like, yes, we were hoping to be open by the state, but this has come up. We're working with the state on it. We'll keep you posted. Yes, we're still working towards opening the grocery store. Please be patient, as we're trying to be patient too. So yeah, let's see. We're still good on time, I think. We had some issues with discovering with a distributor in the state of Minnesota. You can only go through a distributor with securing your food. When we were at the Rural Grocer Summit in Kansas this last summer, we discovered that in Kansas, you can just go to any old store pretty much and get your food. People would say, hey, I ran to Sam's and picked this up. Hey, I got here and picked this up. And Alex and I looked at each other just dumbfounded, because we would be able to save so much money if we could pick things up at different stores, because, at their price point to buy as a customer for us, what we would pay our distributor is at a higher point. So those are just kind of some challenges we've kind of ran into or have discovered along the way. I don't know if that will ever change for Minnesota. I'm not sure how they came up with those rules or things like that, because we're still figuring out this whole grocery thing. But I found it interesting that other states, their regulations can be a bit more lax than what we have here. So that's something I want to maybe dig in a little bit deeper and find out why the background reasoning for that. One other challenging habit, or changing habits, was another challenge we came up with. So because the grocery store was closed for about 4 years, like there was the time when Nelson's closed, so a 4-year gap, and then we opened, people changed their shopping habits out of necessity. So one of the challenges that we are still coming up against is how do we bring people back to town for shopping? Because you get into a routine of, I'm going to drive to Alexandria, take care of all this stuff, purchase my there. And so it's been a learning curve with how do we get people to stay in town. We have a good base and group of people who want to support local, and they do shop local. And so it's just finding more and more ways to include and encourage changing of those shopping habits. All right, we can go to the next slide. Let's see, I'll buzz through this real quick. So I mentioned before, we're open Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then Saturdays, we're open 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Once in a while, a holiday will fall on a Tuesday or for example, Thanksgiving is always on a Thursday. So what we'll do is we'll put a sign up in the window and we'll put on our Facebook page, hey, for Thanksgiving, we will actually be open on Wednesday during these times so that people still have the opportunity to get in and shop and pick up any last minute things. Last Thanksgiving was a lot of fun because we got to spend the entire day with family and all the cooking, but yet we could also pop on and see who was utilizing the store, or seeing how many times, hey, someone picked up a can of this, or there was this and this and that, and oh man, someone got a whole bunch of ice cream. Maybe they forgot to get that for the pie. And so that was really neat to see people utilizing that, because a lot of times on holidays, stores are closed. And so to be able to have that option to grab what you need, any last minute items or additional items, it was really neat to see all that movement there. We had set a membership goal for the first year. Our aim was to get 50 full year memberships, and we exceeded that goal within the first week. We had close to 100 membership signups that first week, which was amazing. We've tried running numbers and looking back, and we average about 80% of members utilizing that access per month. And then overall, about 40% of our revenue does come from membership purchases, which we thought was just huge. And so that was really, really exciting to see. And we do try our best to help support local as we can too. The Department of Ag is really good about saying, hey, support your local gardeners. You can sell their produce in your store. Bring that on in. We also feature Millerville Butter, which is from a local creamery in the area. A very local family, a few miles outside of town. We were able to bring in their honey and sell that. We've partnered with Bo Coffee Company out of Starbucks, and we're the first grocery store to sell their specialty coffee. And we also, once a month, we partner with the Water Drop Flower Shop, which is the only flower shop that's local. Otherwise, you have to drive to Alexandria or Fergus Falls. And so once a month, she'll bring in different arrangements of flowers and things like that. Oh, and this is Alex joining us. Okay. There you go. All right, next slide, please. You want to take over this one, honey?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So some exciting news. We did recently take over a second location. This one is in Hoffman, Minnesota. It's about a 25-minute drive away from home, about the same distance away from Alexandria as Evansville is. Population's a little bit higher in Hoffman than it is in Evansville, but they are a town that has multiple businesses in it. So Evansville is kind of more of that bedroom type community. There's some businesses in town. A lot are family owned and operated. And so that means a lot of people are traveling outside of Evansville for work. In Hoffman, we've noticed there's a lot of businesses that employ people. So there's a lot of people staying in town for work, and then, obviously for living too. And so it's been interesting to see the differences between the two stores so far. We're kind of, I guess, starting to realize with having more people working in town, they're more apt to utilize that store more, because then it doesn't mean they have to do an extra trip out of their way. You're throwing me off. Where are we going? Okay. But it's, right now it's running as a traditional store. There's a lot of background work that needs to be done to get it ready to have that 24/7 access brought in. We are hoping to introduce that hopefully next year. But there's a lot that goes into it. You know, with Evansville, it was starting from the ground up with a whole new business and figuring the access part out. Now we're getting knowledge on what we need to do when it comes to converting a traditional store into this kind of hybrid model. So we got a lot of work cut out for us, but we're excited to tackle that on. We've had a lot of people asking already, when is this going to be available? We've also had some really good conversations too, reassuring people we will still be open and have traditional hours. At this point in time, we don't know how many days or what those hours would look like. But as we get to know the community and know people more, we'll be able to tighten in on that and figure out that sort of stuff, how to move forward with that. And then next slide, please. So looking to the future, as I mentioned before, we see how this could really complement a bunch of different models that are already out there, which, you know, I think it would be exciting to see how things could work or in what capacity that would look like. I touched on, you know, the opportunity for various management options, especially with the co-op model is, you know, I think the main goal here for everyone is we want to keep small town grocery growing and thriving and sustainable. And so if we can find ways to help support that and change, you know, as times are changing, continue moving forward with that and growing will be, you know, great for everybody. And I do love how this model can be very flexible depending on what type of community it would be utilized in. I had mentioned before about our point of sale. We're kind of outgrowing it a little bit. What we found with the Hoffman store is it's about 4 times the size of our Evansville store, and our point of sale in Evansville right now would not be able to support that. And so we are looking to see if there's different options out there so that we can streamline, have the same point of sale inventory for both sides that will work and flow well. And then, you know, we can switch between the 2 stores and that sort of thing.
Great.
All right.
We've got a good number of questions, so I just wanted to make sure that you guys are ready.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna just leave on the screen for saying people can see that, and then I'm gonna stop sharing that in a minute so people can. But so I'm gonna go through some of the list, and then we've got more. So first off, can you talk about setting up distribution relationships? What distributors do you work with? How did that go? This is often a challenge for really small volume stores.
For us, we have one main one that kind of covers most of our grocery needs, and then we have kind of some our small local ones that we work with. We're luckily fairly lucky with our distributor because we have a reasonable minimum order quantity. And if we're not able to meet that we're actually able to go and pick up at the warehouse. And luckily they're only about a half an hour away. So we have heard other people are not quite as fortunate and have larger order volumes. And that's where we've heard of other people, they'll do, you know, a few stores get together and they do kind of one main order. And then they can kind of still utilize a central drop point. So we're fortunate enough, but we have heard of other people's struggles.
That's good to know, because it's so regional. It's so if you guys are looking, if anyone's looking at this model who's watching now, the distributor question is going to be huge about whether you can find someone to work with you the way you need to be worked with. Square footage of the first store. People are just asking, how big is that store? What's the square footage?
It's around 900 square feet. We had a really small building to work with. We were kind of limited in building options for purchasing in Evansville too. So we maximized as much of a storefront as we could, and we have a very, very, very small back room. So whatever we have, you're pretty much going to find right on the shelves because there's not much storage in the back.
Great, excellent. I started out my career working in 800 square foot stores, so I am feeling you. So people are asking, did you utilize a market study? How did you estimate sales to plan this business?
I guess probably what we really did was we kind of went to our neighboring towns and we we just kind of parked out on the curb, and we sat there for an hour or 2 hours at a time. And we just kind of watched as people, how many people came and left. And then we just kind of, we did a rough kind of average basket volume. And that's pretty much what we based our initial projections on. It wasn't much, but we couldn't really find much for resources to kind of, that was realistic for our situation. So we thought if we kind of just camped out on a few smaller groceries, and then we kind of just did a conservative projection from that.
Okay. And any follow-up questions on that specifically? We're going to do the tech question last. I know everyone that was in the Q&A, we're going to get there, but that one's last. Any questions about that market study piece or how they made projections? Okay. All right, then another question just people brought up was, are you going to keep opening more of these stores, or have you looked at having community partners in other communities who are going to run those stores and be in some kind of partnership with you?
I see for us that we'll, depending on what becomes needed locally, of course, for us to personally run stores, we're kind of limited on distance, but for what we kind of see for locally that makes sense for us, we might help out, but we'd certainly want to find ways to extend our reach further out and be able to help in some fashion. We're not quite sure at what point what it could look like, but we certainly don't want to keep this model just to our area. We really like to see this spread throughout the state and maybe even the country too.
I think that brought up a question I was going to ask at the end, which is, you're going to get a lot of phone calls when this video gets out for the East Coast and stuff. And how is that? Just asking if you guys had some way that people are accessing you consulting wise or so forth, but we can circle back to that. So let's go ahead and get into it. People would like to know what technology you're using, what are you using to make this after hours program work, specifically tech wise?
Well, we've really used some pretty basic systems. They're off. I like to say they're off the shelf. Our door access. There are hundreds of door access companies out there, as we learned when we were looking during research time. And so like for our door access, we use one company for that. We have a separate company for our point of sale. And for our memberships, it's really, we just use Excel files. We really couldn't find a lot to have it all included and be affordable. We did find options, but none of them were affordable for what we felt they should be costing. So we just really went as basic as we could just to kind of prove the idea. And that's our door access. It came down to what we were looking for and affordability wise. And for our point of sale, we found a company. Unfortunately, we found their limitations, and unfortunately, they're not able to grow much more with us. So we're having to come up with some new solutions, we'll say. So now that we've kind of proven the idea and the model, we're hoping to kind of start making things a little bit more efficient and maybe kind of create a system all in one. So.
And Caileen, you mentioned, so with this, and I just lost it, with that system, security precautions, you were talking about training people to utilize it and how that's gone, and what an amazing community service has actually even become, teaching people some of these skills and these pieces of technology. Has there been, as far as you guys know, any issues with the security, the safety of the store, with product walking out? Is that something you've been able to keep an eye on, and what's been your experience?
So I like to say, Caileen's been speaking for 45 minutes, so I figured I'd help out a little bit. As far as theft, that's usually the first question everybody asks. Mm-hmm. And our response really to that is, our membership fee is paid up front. And for the amount it costs, we kind of feel it takes care of maybe some of the intentional stealing that was going to happen. Because we like to say, are you really willing to steal after you've already paid $75 for a membership? You know, probably not. You're probably going to go down to the gas station or something. So we have not seen any intentional stealing. There's been some accidentals that it clearly sees. We've noticed there's maybe one product that's missing. We do an inventory count, we're off one. And we knew it happened within a certain range. So as we look into things, we can kind of see that, looking back on the camera footage, that it was clear that they tried to scan it. They did the motion, but for some reason it just didn't pick it up, and they were doing the motion. So at that point, we kind of just look to see, you know, what's it worth, you know, do we need to confront a person over 75 cents, or do we just kind of let this one slide? So, and maybe follow up on their next visit to make sure that they're running things properly. But we really, as far as security, it really hasn't been an issue. I think a lot of it just is the community is glad to have this back, have food available, and to be able to shop when it's most convenient for them. And so we've also had people that well, I was in last night. I wasn't quite sure. Can you check on this for me, please? I just want to make sure my card went through. So.
And I think that that's specific to the type of community. I kind of figured. You mentioned, I know we should be wrapping up right now. You mentioned live inventory. Is that part of your POS? How much time and energy is that taking for you guys to be able to run that kind of live inventory? I'll leave it there.
Inventory isn't too bad. We could do kind of spot counts or sections or brands. So the inventory upkeep isn't too bad. That's one kind of benefit from being in there every other day. And we're adjusting the shelves. We might notice that, you know, we're down to 2 cans of tomato soup. I don't recall seeing those transactions, because we'll usually at the end of the day, we'll kind of review transactions or from the day before, just to kind of get an idea of what sold that day. And it has our inventory is integrated into our point of sale, and it's been working pretty good as far as that side of things.
Okay. So, and that's one of the unique things I do want to point out with the volume of this store is that live inventory work, to put all that, you know, every product that comes in live inventory, but watch the inventory, is kind of on a very different scale from a larger store. I know we have even more questions, but we've taken your full hour. So I'm going to do some wrap up. If you guys are willing to stay and answer a few more questions after we finish the video, lovely. If you guys need to get going, I forgot to ask you beforehand, but I'm gonna wrap up real quick, and then we'll see if you have another minute. So we want to thank Alex and Caileen so much. They really went out of their way to come and share this with the co-op community, and we deeply appreciate them. They're doing something pretty incredible that I think could have far-reaching benefits for rural communities. So thank you guys so much for being here. Just in case you didn't see the rest of the series, we do have another session coming up tonight on ordering and offering co-op t-shirts. It doesn't seem like a big deal. It's really a big headache and can be very complicated, yet an important piece of getting your brand, the whole idea of your co-op, out into the community. So come check it out. Jerry Nash has really worked out all the kinks and the details on how to do this through Prairie Food Co-op, another startup food co-op. We'll be talking tomorrow morning with Katie Novak about the silent phase of fundraising. This is for startups that will be either doing individual fundraising and or owner loans, owner investment programs. If you're not going to be utilizing those individual donor programs or individual loan programs, then this is specifically for that style of funding. And she's going to offer some terrific input and information about why the silent phase, before you even really get the campaign going, is most important. Then we're going to get to our last of this series. I'm excited to have Ron Hantz back from Network for Developing Conscious Communities, talking about building the Black co-op ecosystem. It's going to be a full panel and a really great conversation. So I want to thank you all again for being here.